Hello and welcome back to the GCSunscast. It's another episode, a big episode this week. It's the only Gold Coast Suns podcast by fans for fans. I'm Shane, your host, and this week we are talking about the Gold Coast Suns trade period. It's been a crazy 10 days. We've lost some of our key players, but before we delve into that, welcome back as always, regular host Tom.
Yeah, g'day Shane. How's it going?
Yeah, good, Tom. And joining us today, we've got another special member, hopefully a regular guest of future podcasts, Shannon. Shannon, say hi and give us a rundown of why you're a Suns supporter qualified to talk about the Suns on this show.
G'day Shane, g'day Tom. Long time Suns fan, disgruntled Suns fan I might add. Done my time flying around watching the games. Been to games in every state and just, very passionate and follow it very closely. So few things I've gotten to know, but we'll just see how we go.
Well, that's good. Tom's a very opinionated sort of Suns fan. Do you reckon you can counteract his energy?
No way at all. Tom, as we do know, his opinions are strong and his opinions are generally right. And I don't think I can keep up with him on a word count, so it's going to be a struggle, but we'll see how we go.
No, not the word count. It's hard enough editing Tom out of the podcast as it is. What our listeners don't hear is I have to edit half of the podcast down to cut out most of Tom's talking. I don't ever edit my stuff. It's always Tom's stuff I edit.
It's true.
Let's jump into it. The first thing to go over is the Gold Coast Suns were given concessions by the AFL to sign 3 previously listed or drafted players. Now, we have taken Josh Corbett, a tall forward or probably a mid-sized forward from Werribee. He won the best young player in the VFL this year. We've taken Chris Burgess, a versatile swingman from West Adelaide, known for having an accurate kick. And Sam Collins, a former Fremantle defender. He is a key defender that has recently improved his intercepting ability. And he played for Werribee this year as well, came runner-up or third best in the best player in the VFL.
Yeah, look, we've talked about this before about, what do the Suns need? And, they could give us more money in the cap. They could give us more draft picks. They could give us priority picks. But I think that the club's basically gone in and said, look, we need mature players. We need some way to get access to them. And they've given us what we've asked for. So I couldn't be happier. I don't think anyone would have been very happy about us getting, top of the draft or an end of first round concession. We don't need any of that. We need some ready-made players, and a bit of mail that I've got is that people like Stuart Dew have been seen at Werribee matches this year. So I think we've had our eyes on Corbett and Collins for quite a while, and Burgess is from South Australia. We're becoming the third SA club, aren't we?
Yeah, they're all great players. Done my research, particularly after we've signed them up. But the most exciting thing to come of it from me is just the heart they've shown. They've all got different stories as to where they've come from and how they've made their way onto the Suns list. But they're all passionate. They all love football. From all accounts, they're giving 110% to get onto an AFL list. Some for the first time, some getting their second chance, as we know. But just hopefully that passion, and we've seen it with players like Holman, Young, what they've done for the Gold Coast in 2018. Hopefully that resonates next year and we sort of see the results of what a bit of heart can bring to the team, their own performance and just players around them.
Yeah, we'll touch on this a bit later with some of our recruits we got from other AFL clubs, but it is refreshing to see players coming to the club and actually vocally wanting to be at the club, very excited to be here. And the good thing about these concession signings is they're all around 22 years old. They've all been playing against men in lower tier competitions, which admittedly are a step up above the NEFL competition up here in Queensland. But there's a bit of excitement around the supporter base at the moment because there's a real unknown about these concession players and just how much of an impact they've had. We've seen what Tim Kelly and Bailey Fritsch has done in the AFL this year as mature age players, and there's hope that these three players could all have a similar impact for the Suns, which would have a huge impact on our playing group and our fortunes. But moving on, let's discuss the other big news besides players, and that is our coaches. We've actually got a few more coaching announcements in the last couple of weeks. So I think on our last episode, we discussed Tate Kessler and Tim Clark coming from Adelaide and Carlton, respectively, as development coaches. We've also found out yesterday that we've secured Franku from Adelaide as head of development and Andrew Swallow, David Swallow's brother, as the stoppages coach.
Yeah. Oh, well, don't forget Josh Drummond, who we did talk about last time as well. Some really quality appointments there. Solomon stays as a senior coach. It's good to have continuity, but we needed a big refreshment. We just last year we just seemed to be a bit same in some areas. I expect to see a big improvement with these assistant coaches. I especially like Swallow. As everyone who regularly listens would know, I've got a pet theory that if we hire assistant coaches who are still playing football, that we can chuck them in the NEFL team when we get a few injuries. So we could be seeing the older Swallow playing a bit of NEFL this year. I don't think we'll be seeing him playing in the same game as his brother, but maybe on the same day.
Yeah, and the other thing, a lot of these appointments are development coaches. So that sort of indicates where the club is heading in the next year or two, and that's highly focused on youth. Wouldn't you agree, Shannon?
It's something we definitely need. And, with the young draft picks we've got, and it looks, we'll delve into it a bit later with the draft picks we've got for next year as well. There's going to be a lot of talented youth coming through. So it's just an area we can't go wrong in, hiring people that sort of can push that development line a lot harder.
Yeah. All right, well, let's jump into the meat of the episode, the trades and the free agency stuff that went down in the last 10 days. Now, something we've known for a few months is free agency. Tom Lynch elected to go to Richmond, and Gold Coast didn't match the offer. In return, we got pick 3.
Mark Evans did come out and say that it was an option right up until the end of the 3 days after Richmond made their offer. The option was on the table to match, but in the end, it just made too much sense just to go in, don't take any risk, get that pick 3, and we've got a fair idea of the kind of player that we're going to get. So, although I would have liked to have seen them just take Richmond to the wall and get both their first-round picks for the next 2 years and probably both their second-round picks as well, see them squirm. We got pick 3, they got their player, and they sold us a couple of cheapies. We got Ellis and Miles for a bag of chips. We might even end up with that. They might even end up, if we finish above Richmond on the ladder, that they're paying us to take Ellis and Miles. That's how cheap it was.
I think you're drawing a long bow there, thinking that we might finish higher on the ladder than Richmond. But
never know.
You do never know. But look, I've got a different point of view from you. I'm actually pretty respectful of the way Richmond handled it. Yes, Miles and Ellis, they're not world beaters by any stretch of the mind, but the fact that they have given them to us too cheap, I think that definitely plays into the whole Tom Lynch trade and what we got. Richmond obviously didn't have to give up anything for them, but no, there's a bit of respect there for me. I'm happy with where that ended up.
Yeah, I felt like Richmond played ball when it came to the complementary trade, let's call it, of Miles and Ellis. It seemed to be a steal for Gold Coast with what they got. Just to clarify, Gold Coast Suns received Anthony Miles, Corey Ellis, and a future third-round pick tied to Richmond in exchange for Gold Coast's future third-round pick. Next trade that happened was a pick swap between Gold Coast and Brisbane. Gold Coast gained pick 24, 58, and 79 from Brisbane. In return, Brisbane got 32, 41, 44, and 77. So nothing too big there. I think the main purpose of that trade was just to get an extra pick lower down the order. The goal coming into the draft was to have 5 picks inside 30, and getting that 24 from Brisbane ensured that we did have 5 picks inside 30.
It also seemed that maybe they were going to always going to come back to us with a potentially with an advantageous trade for us. So, you know, we've given up a few index points as far as the value of the draft picks, but then later on we've probably gotten, well, we'll get to it, but we've potentially gotten the better of the deal, or a deal that they might not have otherwise made if we didn't give them enough points to be able to do the deals that they needed to do, because they were almost as busy as we were.
Yeah, Brisbane were one of the main players in the AFL trade period. The next trade was Aaron Hall going to North Melbourne in exchange for pick 68. You guys find anything a bit strange about this trade, or you thought it was about fair, Tom?
Oh, well, first of all, how's the arrogance of the bloke going on the North Melbourne website saying he's proud to be a kangaroo when the trade hadn't even gone down? Mind you, we got him for nothing. We got him in the pre-season draft when no one else wanted him. We got fair value out of him. If anything, to get a draft pick back for him puts us in front, doesn't it?
Personally, I'm a little bit disappointed by the pick. I think if we had any cones about us, we would have, especially after that video was released, we probably could have demanded a little bit more for him. Yes, he has his ups. Yes, he has his downs. My feeling is in a midfield that's a little bit more experienced and a little bit more sort of switched on, he will thrive down there at North Melbourne. Whether it's enough to sort of get that wish of finals that he's after, I'm not too sure about that, but I definitely feel we could have pushed a little bit harder on that one.
He is Tasmanian too, so it shouldn't be, the North Melbourne are upping their home games to 4 home games in this year in Hobart. So, they might be a potential trade partner in the future for a few of our Tassie blokes who might be on their way next year. But I don't think we've got too many left. So.
No, we don't. We've definitely got rid of a few of them. Luke Russell's gone. Lonigan potentially on his way out. We don't know about that.
KK's gone.
The next trade was a future third-round pick tied to Hawthorn coming to the Gold Coast Suns in exchange for Jack Scrimshaw and a future 4th-round pick from Gold Coast. So this is one that seemed to irritate a few people. There's been reports on Jack Scrimshaw being a lazy footballer and not really having the passion or work ethic to be a professional athlete, especially up on the Gold Coast. You've got an opinion on this, Tom?
Well, I mean, it's giving him away. If we come last and Hawthorn win the flag, we've moved up one spot at the back of the draft. It's a terrible thing. However, I've been pretty down on Scrimshaw all year. I didn't think he deserved to play AFL. I watched a lot of him in the NEFL. He was a first half champion and didn't have the tank. I don't think he's going to be a successful AFL football player. It's just that's my bottom line. And see you later, Jack.
I agree with that. I just don't think, from all accounts, his mind's not in the right spot, and he hasn't got what it takes mentally between the ears to actually do what's needed to become an AFL player. Yes, we paid high for him. We took that chance on him. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. Unfortunately for that one, it doesn't. We have to be happy with what we get there, I think.
I mean, in the end, if Jack Scrimshaw can, put it all together, then he can be a great footballer, potentially. The fact of the matter is, at the moment, he hasn't been able to do it, and he just doesn't really seem to hold any value, at least for the Suns. I guess it all falls on the Hawthorn and the pressure he's now going to be under to perform at Hawthorn. Next trade, we traded the pick 68 we got from North Melbourne for Aaron Hall to Adelaide for a future 4th-round pick. So it didn't seem like there was too much there for us, but if you delve and look in behind the scenes, shortly after that trade was done, Adelaide released Josh Franco from his contract so that Gold Coast Suns could add him as a coach. So I get the feeling it was sort of a goodwill trade to Adelaide to get Josh Franco to the club. What do you guys reckon?
I hadn't actually picked up on that, so that's a really valid point. And, there's a lot of that stuff going on behind the scenes. But, if that is the case, which you've raised a very valid point, probably not a bad move by the Suns, getting a bit of good faith in there to make those sort of events happen. Yeah,
we needed to go back and trade a bit to the future. Wouldn't even be surprised if we're trading more for future picks even after now.
Well, that future fourth plays a part in another trade later on, but I'll get to that later. The next trade was George Hall-Smith came to the Gold Coast Suns for pick 59 going back to Geelong. So that seems about right for a player of his ability.
I think that's a steal. I've rated Hall-Smith and was pretty excited by the prospect of him coming to the Suns. What he brings to the team is a lot more than what is on the field, from all accounts. Once again, and I keep going back to it, but the culture and just that strong character is something we need. I think he is going to have to work hard to be a constant fixture in our top 22, but I think that what we paid for him, that's one that we won. Sorry, that's a trade that we won.
Yep, agreed.
Now, if we move on to the next trade, it was a confusing one that happened today, but could potentially net us a top 10 draft pick for next year. We received Brisbane's future first-round pick in exchange for pick 19, which we got from the West Coast trade last year. We also traded a future second and a future third. The third is tied to Hawthorn's ladder position, which was a trade that we did earlier with Jack Scrimshaw. So essentially, Jack Scrimshaw's picks have come part of this trade here.
So Jack Scrimshaw could potentially be part of what nets us, a pick from that maybe 3 to 10 range. So that, it all plays in together somehow, doesn't it?
That's a good point. And the other point is these draft picks, when they first sort of come into existence, they keep their original owner as attached to it. So pick 19 is the West Coast pick that we traded for last year, which is the worst trade in the history of the AFL draft. And at the time, I called it a potential stroke of genius, but it could still be a win for us if we get the best case scenario, and all things sort of play out in our favour, and the value of that pick, which is I think it came to something like 3,500 draft points, and we just gave away so much to get so little. Whereas this time, we're just going to get a good pick, and we don't have to come out in front, or even if we come out a little bit behind, it doesn't even matter. It's a gamble that I don't think there is too much chance that the gamble's going to go really south. I can't see the Lions winning the premiership, and I don't think we're going to get the wooden spoon because we haven't bloody got the wooden spoon since our first season. So, we're not going to go that far down. They're not going to go that far up.
We definitely did say that about the West Coast trade, that it wasn't going to go south, but it's hard to see it happening with Brisbane. I guess best case scenario for Suns fans who want to see good draft picks as well would be to see Brisbane finish bottom and us finish sort of not far above it. But I think, honestly, we're going to take wins over a high draft pick next year.
Yeah, it really just seems like a gamble, or more accurately, a long-term savings account that the Suns have decided, well, this isn't working for us. Let's stick it in the savings account again and see if we can make more money off it.
Yeah, and it's been proven with clubs like the Giants, where they go in and get 2 high picks in the top 10, or 2 or 3 or 4 in the top sort of 10 or 12. And those guys come through the system at the same time, and they all sort of emerge together, and they've sort of brought their whole list forward. Mind you, they've lost better and more players than us this time around. Not that that's what we're here to talk about, but I'm a big fan of paying it forward.
The next trade was probably arguably the biggest for Suns fans, with Stephen May and Cade Kolajasny going to Melbourne in exchange for pick 6. Now, let's break this one down, because Stephen May was arguably one of our best players, and if he wasn't before Tom Lynch left, he certainly was afterwards. You're a big fan of Stephen May, Tom. You've been associated with his number 17 for quite a while. What do you make of this? This must be really tough for you.
Yeah. Look, when your favourite player gets dumped, and this is what's happened. I mean, it goes back to May last year, taking his time, deciding on whether he was going to sign up again, and then only signing for 2 years. But he had all of the hand in those negotiations. And I feel like we've in the last sort of 18 months, we've got a new CEO, a new list manager, a new coach, new. And I feel like they've sort of gone, well, look, we didn't sign him up to any of these contracts, and we didn't pick him in the first place, and we didn't make him captain. We really didn't do any of these things that he sort of feels like he's entitled to. And so they just took it all away from him, and he's just gone, all right, see you later. Whereas he could have gone, okay, I understand that you want to do this deal now, and the fans expect it, and everyone is pushing me to do it. My preference was for him to sign up, but if his heart wasn't in it, then they've pushed him, and he's cracked. So good luck to him. I won't hate him. He's still one of the best players going around in the comp as far as I'm concerned. I'll be spewing if they turn him into a forward and he kicks 100 goals. But I said in about round 20 that Melbourne might actually win the whole competition, and they weren't that far off. So they're trading for now to get better. They've lost Hogan, who they didn't have, and he might have been the difference between a premiership and a preliminary final loss. So, we get another top pick, and, onwards and upwards as far as that's concerned. So good on you, Maisie. See you later. If you don't like Melbourne, come back for a third round pick in a few years.
You got anything to add to this, Shannon? You've met Stephen May on a couple of occasions. Is this sort of out of character for him to suddenly just pack up and leave down to Victoria?
Very out of character, I would have thought. Now, there seems to be some underlying factors not related to football, the Suns, that have attributed to this decision, which we won't go into here. But look, I'm definitely very sad to see him go. Definitely a favourite of mine also, Tom, so don't feel like you're alone there, and I'm sure many Suns fans agree. But I think it was mentioned by Cameron. Now, we basically give Kolajasny away for nothing in that trade. But when Cameron came out this afternoon and mentioned how Kolajasny being part of that deal would not have been something done with Hump. So once again, if you look at it on paper as seeing pick 6 for Stephen May and Cade Kolajasny, looks bad, looks awful for us. But when we group it all together, which we've all done now, I think it's with the addition of Jack Homsch, it all makes sense, and it sort of mellows it out a little bit.
Yeah, and I guess going onto that, Shane, he's the next bloke we talk about, isn't he? He's someone who could be a straight swap for May as far as his position. But what do we know about his injuries and stuff?
I just want to touch on May first. It's sad to see a bloke like Stephen May go. I've met him myself a few times, and he just seems like a very genuine, honest bloke. So, there's been conflicting reports about why he's left the club, everything from personal reasons to the club forcing him out. So, whatever it ends up being, I don't think anyone could hold a grudge against Stephen. He's given his heart and soul to the club, and You just have to look back to that famous win this year against Sydney and how he was after the game. That he loves this club, and I don't think you just lose that passion or that love for the club overnight. He's decided to make a personal decision to move down to Melbourne, and whether that's for success or whether that's just for family and personal reasons, well, we'll never know. But all the best for May, and I really do hope he finds success. Probably the first Gold Coast Suns player I've actually wished to have success away from the club. Let's move on to Stephen May's replacement. We secured Jack Hompsch in the next trade from Port Adelaide for the future 4th round pick tied to Adelaide that we got for pick 68, which we got for Aaron Hall. So essentially, we've turned Aaron Hall into Jack Hompsch. So that's not a bad trade.
I'll go one further and say Aaron Hall and Cade Colajasny into Jack Hompsch. But yeah, that's another way I haven't looked at it yet, and it seems reasonably fair when you do look at it from that point of view.
So Hompsch has had injury problems, but he has played 98 games, is a key defender, and first played with GWS. They selected him as one of the 17-year-old concessions that they had, just like we had in our early years, and has gone on to play for Port as well. He has had a couple of injury problems. I'm not aware to the extent of them lately.
His hips have been a big problem as well, to my knowledge. He's not to the extent of what Sam Day's gone through, but just more niggling issues, I believe, that he's had multiple surgeries on.
Well, that doesn't bode well, but I'm sure with Sam Collins, the defender we got in the concessions, that between him and Hompsch, they can provide at least half of what May does and defend the ground. We also have Rory Thompson back there, so not all is lost. And who knows, we might even draft a young key defender.
We don't want to discount Jack Leslie either. I think he has shown glimpses of potential there, and when we were down a few defenders in 2017, he was quite good and very promising for us.
Yeah, agree with that totally.
So let's run a comb through some of these players that we've traded for in the trade period. First is Miles. He's 26 years old from Richmond. He also played at GWS. He's played a total of 71 games and was the JJ Liston medal winner in the VFL this year, which is essentially the Brownlow medal, or the best and fairest in that competition. Now, I'm under the impression he's more of an inside mid. Are you guys aware of anything else?
Definitely an inside mid. Hard body, gets his own ball. I think what he will add to our young midfielders, not just in the physicality, but the confidence that they'll gain from that is really exciting.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And he's even talked about what the reason why he's excited to come to the club is because he's been told that he's just going to be that bull who goes through the middle and softens up the meat so that we can instead of getting thrashed in the second half, he'll have bashed them around enough that our little ball winners can get in there when the game's there to be won. Very excited about Miles, and I think he comes to the club having had that couple of years at GWS with well, for a start, with a bit of their culture would have rubbed off on him, and of course the Richmond culture, but he knows what it's like to be at a startup. And so he wouldn't have come in, and he came into the club ages ago. So he's been banging for this deal for a while. So yeah, he's my opinion, he's the best recruit of the bunch.
Yeah, it looks like not only is he going to bring something on field to help the team, but I think just his presence there is going to help our young kids and help them develop. Blokes like Bowes, Brody, Ainsworth, whoever else is running through that middle, our kids, anyone that we recruit this year is going to have that protection. And that's something that I don't think we've ever had in the history of the Suns, having those big-bodied mids in there to help protect the young kids as they're coming through. So not only is that going to give them time and space to understand the game, but it's also going to protect their bodies and protect a lot of the contact injuries, which the Suns are renowned for having.
Definitely. And it does seem a definite step above from players that were brought in to fill similar roles in the past, such as Mitch Hallahan, who was a decent player but just didn't have that sort of tank to run out a full game. So, yeah, I'm probably leaning to agreeing with you, Tom, that he's the pick of the four that we've brought in, but only time's going to tell with that one.
Now, the next one was Corey Ellis from Richmond. He was taken at pick 12 in the 2014 draft, so that was the same draft as Tuke Miller and Peter Wright. I think he's only about 22 or 23 years of age next year, and his highlights video looked quite good. He looked like he was a good user of the ball, accurate with his kicking. He seems like a bit of an all-rounder sort of mid. The Gold Coast Suns website said he was a winger, a halfback flanker, but from Richmond supporters reporting he's more of an inside midfielder, and that's where he plays his best in the VFL. He's played 27 games. So for me, this bloke is one that's got the most potential to be... He could be anything from an absolute star to just a regular role player for the side. So there's a bit of excitement surrounding Ellis and what he could potentially be.
Is a role player really a bad thing? No. I think someone who can sort of do a little bit of everything along them lines, it's not that bad. And as you just touched on, his disposal and skill level is quite high. So I think it is a win for us. I don't know too much about his physicality levels and how fit he is, but if he can run out games, it's only going to be a plus for us.
He's gotten better every year. I mean, that's something that has to be said. It's just that Richmond have gotten better every year, and I mean, even though they didn't even make the grand final this year, Richmond won the minor premiership this year. They couldn't do that last year or in previous years. They had a down year in 2016. That was his sort of year that he played the most games, but he featured in too many sort of losing teams. He couldn't really find a place in the team. I think his ceiling would be somewhere around the level of Jared Lyons. He's pretty similar in physique and his playing style. Do we have too many inside mids? Yes, we do. Is it good? Is it going to be good to have a NEFL team that has, just as many inside mids who are at AFL standard as the senior team? Yes, that is going to be a very good thing for our NEFL team. I've put a depth chart together, and the depth chart basically where Ellis fits in is as an extra inside mid, but also as an outside midfielder if necessary. And he can also play as a smaller defender. So when it comes to that sort of multiple role player, he fits the bill. He's very much a Stuart Dew selection, I reckon.
All right. Well, the next midfielder and the third player we traded for was George Holland-Smith from Geelong. He's played 51 games. He's been in the competition since 2010 draft, so about 8 years. And the only knock on him is that he's slow, but it seems to counteract with his ability to read the ball and get into really good positions. So it seems like he can play in most positions on the ground, forward, back, midfield. I'd say he'd be used a bit of... Well, Stuart Dew's very keen on having versatile players, so I'd say he'd be used all over the ground, but maybe more as a half back or a half forward to replace Kolajasny.
Yeah, I've got him more sort of on that half back role as well, but just part of the midfield rotations coming into 2019. It's something we haven't had that depth in, and even if he doesn't establish himself as that sort of top 22 player, which we are hoping for, just the depth and being able to run through the midfield is really good. The fact that he's a Sturt boy earns him extra points for me. Charlie Ballard and Holland-Smith, now my two favourite players just from that regard, but definitely very happy to have him along.
Yeah, well, he came up with Sam Day at Sturt, same draft, so those guys would know each other. And as mentioned, they would be looking at. They would have been looking at him. They'd have notes on him. They were looking like picking him way back in the day, and replacing. When you lose players, foundation players, you've got to replace them. When you lose experience like Rosa and Barlow, you've got to replace it. So whilst he's not a 200 gamer, he's been, well, not that he could have possibly played 200 games, but we're losing 130 something games with Lynch, and Hall & Smith comes in and replaces that experience.
It's just spreading that age nicely too, which is something we've probably struggled with over the last couple of years.
There's a big gap when we talk about players who are between the age of, say, 26 and 30. Well, we've just lost two 30-plus players. Richatelli's going back to the rookie list. So we've only got two guys who are going to be 30 next year, or over 30. And we've just got rid of Hall, who was one of our older players, Lynch and May. So we've got this real gap between 26 and 30. Where there are no players. And arguably that's where players play their best footy, in that age. And we've got no one in that age group. But now we've got a whole bunch of guys who are turning that age. So,
yep.
Yeah, and all these blokes that we've brought in, they're all the same. They're all going to be role players, nothing too fancy, but they're going to be out there providing a senior body, doing the 1%ers and the basics, which is what Stuart Dew's going to be wanting our team to do. And the bonus is that they all seem to be good blokes. They're all professional athletes. They know what's required to be a professional athlete, and they should be passing that knowledge on to our younger kids. And hopefully that just drives a really strong cultural change for the Gold Coast Suns. And the last player, Jack Hompsch, we've already touched on him a bit. He's no different. 98 games as a key defender for GWS and Port. Yeah, he's going to slot in and fill that May role quite nicely when he is.
Absolutely. And as I said, I've got this sort of NFL-style depth chart, and I've picked my first 22 and out of players who are already on the list. And so Jack Hompsch comes in to a NEFL spot as a sort of a ready-made defender. And that means we've got 5 key position defenders on the list. Of course, Burgess is a swingman, so that means we've got 5 tall forwards and 5 tall defenders to pick from. And we might only be picking 2 at a time at each end. So, it's looking good for us as far as that's concerned. And one more thing, that I'm a big NEFL fan. When you see all these 16, 17-year-old kids running around chasing after Mick Barlow all day and getting flogged by 50 points, it's so discouraging because you can't see development in those kids. Having this depth means that all of those guys who miss out on senior selection are going to go out and bust a gut to try and make it into the top team. And they're not going to be injury-prone kids. They're men who can actually play with a couple of niggles and that kind of thing. So, we're killing it for depth now.
And he has shown in the past that he can be a good player. Like, I think he finished 3rd in 2015 in the Port Adelaide Best and Fairest. So, regardless of how good a team is, it takes a fair effort to get that high up. And once again, I'll keep going back to it. The character, he's twice won the Community Award, John McCarthy Medal, which is awarded to the player who does the most in the community. So just another player with a solid character that wants to come to the Suns. And that in itself makes me happy regardless of any skill level.
Yeah, it's all really exciting news, this type of player that we're getting into the football club. Certainly something different to what the Suns have done before, and fills us with a bit of encouragement that we're heading down the right path. Despite being our 3rd rebuild, maybe 4th, I've sort of lost track. So that's all the players that have come to us. How are we going for our list spots? Because we can only draft in as so many spots as we've got. So do you have the numbers there on how many list spots we still have available?
Yeah, so we cleared out 9 players, basically, and off from the senior list, and the other players we cleared out from the rookie list. Of course, we got the extra two rookie spots, which is where 2 of the mature age players have slotted in. So what it's left us with is we've got 6 draft picks and 5 senior list spots. We have a Category A rookie spot left, which so we have 2 of those left, but one of them's been designated for Risha. And we've also got a Category B spot available for an international, maybe the next Mason Cox is waiting to be discovered, or else we get an academy guy, or we leave it free. The minimum payment for a rookie is about 1% of the cap, just under 1% of the cap. So if we've got cap trouble, we may not use it. However, the AFL gives us 2 extra list spots, and then we only use one of them. Like, they're not going to give us any concessions in the future if we just throw it back in their face. So,
I don't think cap space is an issue at the moment. I mean, we've just cleared out a number of star players that all would have been on high coin. I saw it bandied about today. It could be as much as 3 million of our cap that's been cleared for tomorrow or for next year. So I don't think cap space is an issue, and the Suns, with their injury history and their NEFL performances, probably need to fill up every single list spot that they have available to them. So I would expect that Category B spot to go to one of our academy players if they're available. And, maybe that Category A spot, we were discussing about it off air, but maybe Mav Weller comes back to the Gold Coast Suns in that position.
Yeah, Shannon and I have been talking about this for most of the year, and I think it's fair to say, Shannon, we're both in favour of it. Is that right?
Definitely. I'm a bit biased. I've liked Mav since the early days, 2009, 2010. I know that when he did leave the Suns, there was a few bridges that he may have burned. Whether them bridges are still at the club, I don't think they are. Fast forward to early 2018, the idea of Mav coming was a bit of a pipe dream to me. But, yeah, basically Lockie said it straight up that he was pretty confident Mav will be by the end of the year. So I think it's going to happen. I don't think he'll find his way onto our senior list, which is going to make things interesting.
Well, he did get delisted today.
Yeah,
Mav.
So we can pick him up as a rookie. I don't think anyone else is going to jump at the chance of picking up a star like Maverick, but we'll just see how we go. I think he comes back to the Suns, if he indeed he does come, he comes back with a few more years' experience, about 80 to 100 more games, and just once again through them rotations and depth, I don't think there's too much hurt that can come via bringing him in.
And the other thing is we've got, what did you say, 5 list spots available at the moment? And that's assuming that Lonergan and Leslie, just 2 that we know of that are out of contract, get offered new contracts. What do you guys think about Lonergan and Leslie playing on?
Well, I've got to make the list longer. If indeed we are intending on picking 6 players with our 6 picks, which we're probably going to trade some of those between now and then. I'm sure we're going to get some really good offers. So watch this space. But Leslie, Lonergan are out of contract. So are Heron and Dawson. Can't see them being delisted. But it is important to mention that they are out of contract. So if they were desperate to bring in, academy graduates from this draft, then 1 or 2 of those could go. But anyway, what's been mentioned is Brad Shear and Harrison Wigg may get delisted and re-rookied. That's a pretty strong rumour that's coming around. So there are 6 players there, but yeah, Leslie and Lonergan seem to be the more likely. However, I do not think that either of them deserves to be delisted. I think Lonergan, when he did play this year, he played really strong roles, did exactly what he needed to do. He's a depth player. At his best, he's devastating. And Leslie, we've touched on, he hasn't been bad for us unless he's been exposed as either the only tall defender that we've got, like they chucked him and Spencer in together for a few matches, and he still performed well, but he was outdone. Or we've selected 3 tall defenders against a team that's just run rings around our the big guys. So I think Leslie's had a pretty rough sort of baptism, and we haven't seen his best. And Lonergan is one of my pet players, so keep him. And I think Lonergan fits the Stuart Dew mould. What do you reckon, Shannon?
I think I don't know whether Lonergan really does fit that mould. He hasn't really had the opportunity to show it. His body has let him down a few times. What he was drafted for and what we hope he shows for the Suns, it seems to be the type of players that we've just targeted in Miles and Ellis. I think that's kind of what we've been hoping for out of Lonergan. I tend to think if we had to choose one of those two to list, I would say that Lonergan would go before Leslie, and that's my opinion. But yeah,
it makes sense given that May has just gone, and that we've just brought in some inside mids. It does make sense.
I would actually say the other way around. I think Leslie's more vulnerable as. If we're going to need to free up another list spot by delisting one of these players, it's going to be for one of our academy boys, such as Graham or Conan, who are both tall defenders or forwards. So therefore,
good point.
They'd be taking Leslie's position. So it could go either way, and there could be an instance where both of them get delisted, and the Suns look to pick up both academy boys. And we've got 3 top 10 picks in the draft this year. Who do you guys think will we select with those 3 picks? Or do we look at either trading one of those picks out to Port Adelaide, or even the other way around and trade pick 6 and something else to St Kilda to try to get pick 4 as well? Because it seems like there's a couple of different strategies the Suns could take leading in, and we know that this year is something different where draft picks can be traded all the way up until draft night and on draft night.
Well, pick 6 is, I think a lot's going to depend on how hard the South Australian teams come at us for the first 2 picks. I think they're the only ones that are going to come hard for us with us targeting them South Australian players. I think we are a lock at taking Lukosius at pick 2. So really that just leaves that pick 3 and 6 as to ones that could fall by the wayside, could end up somewhere else. So we can lock in pick 2, Jack Lukosius in my mind, and I want us to take that chance on Isaac Rankin, whether we do or not, but that's what I'm hoping for.
Agreed. I think best players available. Just the fact that those two go to school together and have known each other forever, and having the 2 of them would be better than just getting one in isolation. Rankin versus Rosie. Well, Rankin is the next Jason Ackermanis, in my opinion. He's got all their skills. He's got the intangibles that he in the and they don't have a final in the national championships, but in the final game, it happened to come down to it that the winner takes all. And it was Vic Metro, who usually win the national championships, and South Australia. And South Australia absolutely killed Vic Metro, and it all came down to Rankin. Lukosius wasn't even that good. At Rosie, average. Rankin, superstar. Kicking goals that no one else in the AFL could kick. Just amazing stuff. One more point that I will make, and that is Port Adelaide and Adelaide were always going to have a lot of draft capital this year. Not as much as us, but they were always going to be players. So they've positioned themselves well. But it's impossible to know what they're thinking, but I hear about all these crazy trade ideas. Like I think Adelaide, they're talking about trading, all of their first round picks just for the Suns pick 6 or something stupid like that. And I'm like, there are more than 3 South Australians in this top 20. Like the South Australian players are going to be 6 or 7 in that top 20, 25. And they're all good quality. So why wouldn't the Crows and the Power just settle for what they've got and try and get one of the top 3 That's a given that there's a battle there. But I don't think I don't think that they're going to have a trade war to try and get more than one.
I think Port Adelaide's in the best position to select one of those top 3 South Australian kids, and it seems to be a consensus of whichever one the Suns decide not to take, as we're all in agreement the Suns should take the South Australian boys. My preference though would be Rosie over Rankin, but one of those boys is going to slip to Port Adelaide at pick 5. Now, whether Adelaide are prepared to cough up everything to try to get a pick 4 or a pick 3 from Gold Coast or St Kilda, then that's up to them whether they're that desperate for one of those players. And at the same time, it would really stick it up Port. And as a former South Australian, I know just how important that rivalry is between those two clubs. But it's interesting for the Gold Coast because they can either try to beat Adelaide to the punch and go to St Kilda, get pick 4, and then take all 3 of those South Australians themselves, or they could seriously entertain some offers from Adelaide or Port Adelaide for that pick 3, and they could end up with pick 2, pick 5, pick 6 and 10, or pick 2, pick 6, pick 8 and 13. I mean, we could... If the Suns decide to go down that path, then there's a strong possibility it might be the 2 King twins the Suns draft, and then look to get some midfielders from Victoria, Jai Caldwell or Bailey Smith if they're available.
I do like the idea behind that. However, as we've just touched on before, list spots is what's going to really slow that down. It's going to be hard to sort of fit those picks into the spots that we have available right at this stage.
All right, well, that sounds like it's the siren, boys. Okay, well, the siren has gone, the trade period has closed, and so is the computer timer on my laptop. It's time for this episode to end. Thanks for joining us, Shannon and Tom.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no, best episode yet. Well, maybe not. Cal Toomey was pretty good, and the Sydney one was lots of fun. But, yeah, it's up there, top 3.
All right, well, another trade period is done. Another ray of hope for Suns fans. Let's just hope it eventuates next year. So until next time, go Suns.